Hello, I'm Laura Meyer, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Lydia Gregory, CEO and co-founder of Figaro. Hi, Lydia. Thanks so much for joining.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Lydia, can we start by you telling us what your business does?
For sure. So we are Figaro. We are the audio intelligence platform for developers. So we're building a range of pre-trained audio intelligence modules to make it really easy for developers to build audio intelligence into their projects and platforms. What do we mean by audio intelligence? You're probably thinking. If we think these days, we're kind of really comfortable with the idea that computer vision, natural language processing, they underpin kind of so many things in our lives, from self-driving cars to now using things like ChatGPT. But audio so far has been neglected. But if you think there's a lot of information in audio, like when you're listening to music as a human, we recognize the genre, we recognize the artist. That's all information that we're extracting. But there's also a lot of other audio in the world. For instance, if you're in a factory and something drops behind you, what was that? Actually, as humans, we're pretty good at working out what that might have been. So as we see it, there's a growing need, a growing opportunity for being the people who understand how to machine extract information from audio. So we've started off in music, and I mentioned these pre-trained modules. So we have, for instance, tagging of descriptive metadata such as genre, mood, instruments, etc. And any company that has a large catalogue of music finds that useful. So you find in the music industry, we think of Spotify, there's a whole lot of plumbing behind that and a whole lot of other different types of catalogues out there. So it helps people to manage that. We're now moving into a range of new modules as well. So we have search, we have automated playlisting, search by reference track. So I want something that sounds like X track, and you can drop it in. And that's very useful for people who want to find music for sync, for advertising, etc. And we're now moving into detection of AI generated music. So we're all very aware of the proliferation of AI and generative AI specifically over the last few years. And that's creating a real headache for rights owners who want to make sure that music coming onto platforms is attributed to the right people. So earlier this year, we were very lucky to win some Innovate UK funding to develop a module which is focused on detecting deep fakes of artists singing vocals. We can go more into that, but you might have seen the original one was Fake Drake. There was a track that came out, and now it's just incredibly easy. They're all over the place. So we're helping platforms do that. And in the very long term, as I said, we can see applications outside of music. So yeah, we're basically AI first, but specifically non-generative use cases. We're all about listening to audio at scale, extracting information so that people can make decisions and actions off the basis of that. And it's all APIs for developers to work with. So that's what we do.
Thank you. And so fascinating, isn't it? The whole fake stuff as well. And like you say, how big it is, the proliferation of it, and trying to detect that so that artists aren't losing money
Exactly.
from their own content, their IP. So
Yes, I think there's we're when we started working on this, we had a strong sense that there would be a commercial need to be able to detect this, but it's becoming more apparent now that that is true. So we're seeing rights owners actually putting pressure on platforms and distributors to detect content that's coming in, whether it's there can be a whole range of types of fraud. And then also AI generated music, which might not, it's not quite the same as fraud. It's not deliberately misleading, but it can be copyright infringing.
fascinating. So, Lydia, can you tell us about your journey into entrepreneurship and what motivated you to start your own business?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a co-founder, there's three of us who are
Mhm.
co-founders. There was two of us who started initially. And we have quite different backgrounds. So both of us describe ourselves as having non-linear careers. So I started out by studying music, and then I went into technology because I wanted to, yeah, it felt like it was kind of being part of building a little corner of the future. So I started off my career at Accenture. And then I've worked in music tech, and specifically AI music tech, now for 9 years. And I met my first co-founder, Kevin Webster, who's a mathematician, at a previous startup. And he's a mathematician. He's also been a professional musician. And really, I think I'd always thought it would be cool to start my own business, but I didn't know what exactly that moment or trigger would be. And really, it was through the two of us talking, and he actually came to me with his research ideas and said, "This is the direction that I think machine learning is going to go." And we were actually working in a very early generative music startup previously, and he was explaining why he felt generative, the kind of challenges it was facing, particularly at that time. And so it was through conversations with him, we felt that there was something there. It was a moment, it was the right moment to be working. We were very early. We were in AI before it was cool. But we felt there was a business there. But also if we could perhaps take that trajectory, and I think there are companies like OpenAI who've done it on a much bigger scale, but that kind of balance between commercial and research we felt was important. And so that was really the catalyst for deciding. It was the discussions that we had had as a two. And then for both of us, I think as well, there was a feeling of we talked a lot about kind of values, like actually what we wanted to see a business be like, the kinds of things that we wanted to be important. For instance, we felt you often see there's either a very strong weighting towards research or it's kind of everything is commercial. And we wanted actually those two things to be on a kind of equal footing. We felt that's how we would get the best results. So it was this kind of idea of balance between, yes, the kind of deep tech side of things and finding ways of commercializing it as fast as possible. So yeah, so for me, I had always, I think, always, yeah, been interested in business and kind of creative and thinking about things that could be done. But for me, it was meeting the right person who had the ideas, and that was the moment.
Yeah. So you've mentioned your co-founders, because my next question was about, did you have co-founders or did you do it solo? Obviously, you've got co-founders. Is that something you wouldn't have done it on your own? You wanted those co-founders, and do you have complementary skills? Would you say so? One of you will do definitely one thing, one another, and therefore it works.
Yeah, it's a good. I mean, there are probably other businesses that you could do solo, but I think really for what we're doing, it's so important to have a co-founder. I think sometimes in tech, there can be a glorification of the sort of, solo person.
Yes, yes.
I think is often the wrong thing, because you always need more than one person to scale something, to grow it. And so yeah, I could not have done what I am doing without them. So I mentioned there's Kevin Webster, the mathematician. We then brought on board about a year into our journey, our CTO, a guy called Jason Story. And so between the three of us, we have wildly different skills. So I've always been in the kind of non-technical. I'm interested in technology. I've kind of on the side done kind of programming courses and things, but I'm not the person who's building the software. So I get to go out into the world and speak to people, find out what people care about, what they'll pay for, and then I can feed that information back. And then you've got Kevin, who's, yeah, mathematician. He's really in the kind of the forefront of the research. And that was phenomenally useful, because what he is able to do is sort of spot trends in the mathematics. And often they're not happening in music. He'll be reading a paper where the experiment was done on, I don't know, a biology data set or whatever it is, but he'll see how that can be relevant to us. That keeps us ahead. And then Jason is a software developer, but he's got a lot of experience sort of deploying machine learning models. So he kind of bridges the gap between Kevin's deep research and kind of knowledge and building of models, and actually putting that into a practical product application. And I think if either one of us wasn't there, then we couldn't have started. Initially with Kevin, he built a kind of a prototype, which was not something you could interact with as a customer. It was in what's called like a Jupyter notebook. But that was enough to get us some investment. We could bring on Jason, then we could start to build things that people would actually be able to interact with and pay for. And then from there, we've also built a team of more people who have different skills to us. And I think that's a really important part of it, is knowing where your gaps are
Yeah.
and not being afraid to find people who are better at doing things than you are. So yes, for me, I wouldn't have done this if I hadn't had co-founders. And I think also just get a bit lonely
Yeah,
otherwise.
yeah, no, totally. Because it's a brave thing to do, isn't it? Starting your own business, and having that support is so important.
Exactly. Yeah, I think for me, the moment when yes, when Kevin first presented his ideas and said, "Do you want to do this?" It was sort of it's always a sliding doors moment, and I thought actually, if I don't say yes, I'll regret not going on that journey. So
Yes, yeah, brilliant. So, Lydia, did you join an accelerator program or a boot camp in the early stages? And if you did, why? And if you didn't, why not?
yeah, so we've done a few different things. So we didn't join any of the sort of there were kind of big, well-known
Yes.
accelerators where you sort of give away 10% of equity up front, or we didn't come out of Entrepreneur First or one of those things. So we didn't do that. But we have done a couple of different things. So we joined pretty early on it was how would you it was kind of it was somewhere between a co-working space and an accelerator. So it's called the Rattle. Our COO actually was the founder of that and now has joined us. And that was a space and an incubator for entrepreneurs and artists. And that was super valuable because I think I know how important it is to have a network. It's like I call it like manufacturing serendipity. It's like if you're in the right space with the right people, you hear things, you meet people, you learn stuff. And through that, being part of that, and I used to go into the workspace and just work there, get advice, etc. We met our first investors, we met our first integration partner, and we learned a whole bunch of stuff. So that was very important. And then we've also done a few things. I've done through Digital Catapult, we did an AI ethics kind of program. That was important I found it interesting. I think it's important to do, and it was good for our kind of brand, establishing ourselves as the kind of good guys. And we've also been part of there's a C Ventures, which supports female founders. We've been one of their first accelerators, and that was super valuable. Also met investors through that. And also just I've now got a WhatsApp group of the people who I was part of with that, and that's an ongoing source of information and support and things. So yes, I think these types of accelerators, it can sometimes be hard to really quantify exactly what the outcome is, but we found them, yeah, very beneficial.
Great. So, what was the right point for you to raise investment, and how would you describe how was your fundraising journey? How did you find it?
Yeah, so that's funny because we actually launched we had our kind of prototype ready just at the beginning of 2020, which was obviously just as then we went into lockdown. And we basically, the plan at that point, January 2020, was we've got this really cool prototype. It was very early in its space. And the goal was to win a pilot with one of these two biggest companies was our goal, and then to raise investment. We actually won pilots with both of those companies, which was fantastic, but we were all in the middle of just sort of being stuck at home and these kind of things. So actually the right time to raise investment would have been exactly then. Actually, what happened was we were kind of a year behind in the end. So we actually began that fundraising journey basically a year after then.
Right.
So I think, yes, it was because it is all about sort of proving that you are on the cusp of at that point it was very much pre-seed. But yes, so we start our fundraising journey basically a year after that point. And yes, it was the right time because we'd sort of proved that we could build something that was novel, and that there were clearly big companies who were interested in having a pilot. And yes, and then the second part of your question was how did we find that fundraising?
Yeah, the fundraising journey. How did you find it? Was it can be a long process, can't it?
It can. So I think I've learned a lot since starting it for sure. And it's lots of it has actually been good. So I think very sort of naive at the beginning of it. And it's really been through, yes, you have to I've built a lot of resilience. I think you learn to sort of take the feedback. There's feedback from all sorts of different places. learning to balance that with what you then still believe to be the right way forward. But in lots of ways, we were very fortunate, I think, because we had begun building the network and reputation early. We started that process and we knew we wanted angel investment, certainly initially. And I can't actually remember how I came across Angel Academy, but either way I did. And we pitched to you. And that was then transformative because then through that, we then met other investors and we were able to bring on board other syndicates. We've got a number of investors from Cambridge Angels, which again then is very helpful. And you get people who give you feedback, give you support on the business as well as the investment itself. So lots of that has been positive. I think it is, yeah, it is long, and I think I've learned how to it's a marathon. Like you have to bursts. It's kind of you can sprint at something, and then you have to sort of take some time to actually recover, regroup, work out the next move. And I think, yes, I think the thing I would do differently if I had known the way things were going to pan out was actually raise that first funding round earlier. And then it would have given us, yes, more time to run at the pace we wanted to.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's really helpful information as well for people who are on their own journey. So what's been the best and the most challenging aspects about what you are doing, Lydia?
Yes. So the best has been so much of it's been great. I think a lot of it's very rewarding doing something, especially in a space that's evolving. It's new. There's kind of not right answers because it's evolving kind of under our feet, and that is very exciting. And the people I get to do it with, that's kind of one of the biggest rewards. I think that first point, though, is also the major challenge because what's happened in our journey is obviously with ChatGPT coming out now years ago, that was a real watershed moment and the kind of AI race really accelerated. So we've seen actually over the last 18 months, really the market that we're operating in is changing. It's changing all the time.
Yeah.
That's brought a bunch of advantages because now there's much more interest, much more knowledge in this space, more capital. Our customers are more ready, but it also brings competition, changing landscape, and we have to react. And we've stayed quite a small team. We wanted to stay independent and these kind of things. So that's been you have to sometimes take a step back and say it is challenging, but wow, it's also really fascinating to be part of. So as long as we keep showing up each day and kind of working out the next step, that's a really rewarding thing to do.
And I'm sure you learn something new every day. It's that environment, right, that you learn so much.
Which can be terrifying because you're sort of always aware that you actually know a fraction of what it's possible to know. But I think that's also why it's been really important to do this with an amazing team because it's actually not possible, no matter how smart you are, to hold everything that is possible to know in your head. You need different people knowing different areas, watching different pieces of information evolve in order to move forward. And I think, not being afraid of the tension that brings as well, like actually sometimes just really welcoming the kind of the debates and the disagreements about what the next step should be.
Absolutely. So, Lydia, if you were to give advice to somebody else starting their journey, what's your top advice, your top tips?
Gosh.
I think you said about maybe think about your timing on your fundraising, which was an excellent point.
Yeah, timing. I think a few things. I think you have to know why you are doing it. I think especially at the beginning, we had quite kind of strong convictions, but then you hear from people you interact with, oh, you should be doing this, or this is what success looks like. And I came up with quite a kind of a sort of, it's almost a cynical view. Is like actually lots of the media that you read, it's like when people are saying you must raise this VC round at this amount and this is the trajectory. Actually, that messaging is coming from people who are trying to sell you something themselves. And actually, every company looks different.
Yes.
about how you have to know why you as a business and as individuals are taking that next step. And I think having the confidence in that is quite important. And especially in our space, in the music space, actually finding the right type of investors, investors who understand the complexities of that space is really
Yeah.
important. Not, but you can, if you're not careful, you can get funneled down this kind of one size fits all route and
Yeah.
wonder why it's not working for you. So I think, yeah, knowing, having that conviction, and knowing why you as a business are doing something, what outcome you want. And that's not necessarily a selfish thing. It can just be, you know, your space, you know, your business,
Mm.
know what is possible,
Yes.
different to another business in this space. And then the second thing I think is, like I said, the marathon, not a sprint. I think it's really making sure you don't get burned out. Like I heard a now younger entrepreneur a few weeks ago, sort of, he was in that really passionate, I've just started my business phase. And he's like, I'm just giving it everything for the first year. And I was like, actually, no, because you need your life to continue. You need a roof over your head, you need your health, and
Yes.
actually maintaining those things. It's not selfish. It doesn't mean that you're not all in on your business. It actually means that you've got more to give.
Yeah.
I think, yes, making sure that you don't sort of, yeah, you maintain balance and you maintain yourself, is also, I think, very important.
A couple of people have mentioned how they reached out to somebody who they thought, they've got a lot of info or a lot of expertise. They've done something. I'm going to ask their advice on something, and that people have been very receptive to that. Have you found that as well as a founder, that when you've asked somebody perhaps for advice or help, that they've been open to that?
Massively. Like people have been just kind and interested. And I think it's um we've found there's very early on in our journey, one guy I'm thinking of in particular who did end up becoming an investor.
Mm.
Uh, he himself had built a successful business in our space. Kind of, he was the pioneer really in the 90s. And he offered us a lot of just, he was a friend. He offered a lot of advice, things that he had learned. And that was incredibly helpful.
Mm.
And I think it can be a kind of a two-way thing, because actually the people who are there to offer you advice, they also want to know what's happened. It's interesting for
Yeah.
them to
Yeah.
the kind of, whatever forefront you're at.
Yes.
So we've found people very open to those conversations. That comes with the one caveat, is you have to understand motivations. We've had a couple of interactions with, for instance, a big tech company who I won't name, and they were all very flattering. This was a few years ago, and actually, really, they were just mining us for market information. So I
Mm.
think it's knowing, yes, knowing there's a lot of people, sort of knowing where you're getting information that's useful for you, and it's a kind of reciprocal relationship. But also being a little bit wary, sometimes when investors or big companies come knocking, um,
Yes.
are being flattering and friendly and have sincere intentions, or whether they are just looking for info.
Yes. Great point. And finally, Lydia, what does the future hold for you and for Figaro?
That is a good, well, so we are going through quite an exciting phase at the moment, which I can't really talk about
Mhm.
the details of. Um, but a process we've been going through now, really since the beginning of this year, is as this landscape's evolving, looking at where we sit in the kind of the stack.
Yes.
So when we first started out, because it was so early, we essentially had to do everything. So from curating data, training models,
Mhm.
a platform layer, and then looking at having kind of applications that individuals could interact with. But what we've been kind of working towards is actually becoming that kind of platform layer. So this is why now our focus is really on enabling developers to build on top of Figaro. And that's because we believe, so as I mentioned, we've worked in spaces like Sync, and we used to have an app, an interface that an individual in an organization could use. But actually what we see is that opportunity in itself is not super large. The really exciting thing, as we're seeing with kind of other, AI-based technology, is actually the really exciting thing is the diversity of things that can be built on top of it. It's that breadth. So that's what we are working towards, and the kind of the scalability the exciting thing is we kind of build capabilities in a more and more kind of efficient way. So we find, something that a model that we've developed for instance, detecting the deep fake singing voices. Actually, we can also use that to improve search. So you get this kind of compound effect of just the system getting better and better. So yes, for us, the future is about being this layer that developers can build on top of. And that means we're open to everyone from startups or individuals right through to enterprises.
Brilliant.
And we're also looking at kind of how we go about building our data set. We've worked a lot with kind of clients historically, and now we're looking at actually new business models that might be possible to make sure that we can remunerate rights owners for the value that they are helping to create, even in our non-generative use cases. And I'm really excited about that because I think it's the direction that I want things to go. But I also think there's a business opportunity there where actually if we can kind of make it mutually beneficial, then we can build hopefully best training set as well.
Thank you. Lydia, thanks so much for your time today and telling us about Figaro and giving us your candid and really helpful insights. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Really fun. Take care. Good to see you.
Bye.